Welcome to the Daily Fantasy Basketball Podcast, brought to you by. Are we being brought by anybody right now, Mark?
No.
Okay, we're not brought by anybody. We're bringing it ourselves. So I'm Kyle McEwen. You can find me on Twitter at RotoKyleNBA, and I'm joined tonight by Mark Roberts, who you can find on Twitter at Mark F. Roberts, and Tyler Watts, who you can find on Twitter at Watsy444. I don't know why I said it like that. Is it okay to say Watsy with that kind of inflection?
Oh,
Tyler?
that's great. That's great, Kyle. That's great.
I mean, it sounded kind of cheesy, but I think everybody's used to that. Hey, welcome back to the show,
Welcome back.
Thanks. I'm excited to be back. This is going to be a good time. In today's show,
I think it's finally time to tell everybody you've been hiking through Europe for a year, but you're finally back, and we're happy to have you back.
I've been sitting on my couch watching YouTube videos for a year. So I'm really hip on Free Dawkins. I could probably.
Did you watch them all?
I watched them all. Yeah, people started Pokemon Go. I sit on my couch and watch YouTube Go. All right, let's talk basketball. Enough of this rigmarole with personal stuff. We're going to get into the Yahoo updated rankings that came across in the last week and a half or so. Initially, when Yahoo launched their fantasy basketball site for the year, the rankings were all over the place. Evan Fournier was ranked 215th overall. Jake Crowder was ranked low as all get out. Several other players were buried in the rankings. And then they came out with an update. And it kind of shook things up as far as what your strategy is going to be going into your draft on Yahoo. You do need to make sure that you are well aware of where guys are ranked now, and you're not looking only at the ADP, because that ADP may still be informed somewhat by the early season rankings. So without putting it off, let's just dive right into it. The first guy, or the biggest jump in the first round, we saw Giannis Antetokounmpo, who was originally ranked 15th overall on Yahoo, jump into the number 7 overall ranking on Yahoo. Mark, I wanted to know, is this too high for Giannis, or is there a difference in where you take Giannis for head-to-head in Roto? Where is it exactly that you would be looking at getting Giannis?
So this is higher than where we have him ranked on the website, pretty much in all formats. And that's not to say I don't like Giannis, or I don't think that you can pick him in the first round. We've had this discussion several times about several different players, which is basically, especially in a snake draft, you really only have one or two shots at the players you really want. So if you're drafting 8th and we've got him ranked 14th, or, you're drafting 10th and you don't think you're going to get him at when you wrap around in the second round, you go ahead and take Giannis if that's the guy who you want. So
what you were just saying was like, you only have your one pick. Like, if you're picking at number 6 and you want Giannis, you have to pick him there because he's not coming around to you in the second round. And that's not to say that you're saying to pick him at number 6, but that's what you're trying to get across, right?
That's right. So our rankings have him usually in the mid to high teens. So like in our 8 category rankings right now, we've got him at 14. In our head-to-head rankings, wait for that here, we've got him at 17. So usually in that mid-teens range. But, with where he's going, his ADP, he's probably not going to make it to you in the second round. If you want him, I think you're going to have to pick him in the first round. And I don't think that's totally crazy unless you've got one of the first, 3 to 5 picks.
Okay, and here I'm going to make an argument. And I want Tyler, Mark, I want you guys both to tell me where I'm stupid potentially, but I think you could make an argument for taking Giannis 4th overall in a head-to-head league, especially if it fits your punt strategy. After Steph Curry, after James Harden and Russell Westbrook in a head-to-head league, I think it's safe to take Giannis Antetokounmpo over anybody else. Like, you can make a decision of saying, you know what, Giannis's 2 blocks and his potential 7 to 8 assists out of the small forward point guard slot, those 2 blocks that he's giving me there are just as important as the difference in rebounds that I would get if I took DeMarcus Cousins. And also just setting up your team in a head-to-head league. If you've got a guy who in the first round you're picking someone who contributes good production in pretty much every single category across the board except for three-pointers, I don't think it's crazy to take Giannis over Karl Anthony Towns in head-to-head, or over Kawhi Leonard in head-to-head, or over LeBron James in head-to-head. I don't think that's crazy at all.
Go ahead, Tyler. Go ahead, Tyler.
I would think that Giannis, like as far as a lot of the guys like ranking in this top range, like we know what they are. Giannis is pretty much the only guy who could potentially like take that big step forward. So I mean, I could see picking him pretty high. I mean, I still think I've taken Towns over him, but I mean, like after that, I mean, I think you can make a case for any of these guys, like taking him over anyone, just because maybe he goes crazy and that wins you your league. You know what I mean?
So here's the players I'm definitely taking over. I think I'm definitely taking over Giannis. I think I'm definitely taking Durant over Giannis. And I think that one's pretty easy, actually. Like, if you start lining up their categories, you got to think Kevin Durant's going to have a pretty hefty margin in points, pretty hefty margin in three-pointers. Rebounds are probably going to be pretty similar. Giannis is probably going to beat him in assists. And, you know, we've seen seasons where Kevin Durant's had a lot of production from the defensive categories, and I could see him boosting those in Golden State, where he doesn't have to carry the offensive load so much. So I actually think Kevin Durant's probably a pretty easy over. I'd take Anthony Davis over him. I would take Chris Paul over him. I'd probably take John Wall over him unless I was worried about his injury. And then I think probably Paul George, and I think about after that, that's when I feel like, and Karl Anthony Towns. And once we get to that point, I'm probably okay taking a number of guys, including Giannis, Cousins, James, Lillard, Draymond Green, Kyle Lowry, those type of players. So I would say the highest I would probably go on him is 7 or 8, because I like those other 7 or 8 guys better. But yeah, I can understand. I can understand where you can get excited about Giannis. I mean, he's so young, he's so good, and frankly, like everybody who had him last year, including me in a couple of leagues, there was no better time for him to produce like he produced. Right? Like, he won a lot of people their leagues last year, so I get the enthusiasm to want to grab him again. I just think when you start matching him up against some of those elite fantasy players, I just think there's a good chance that one of those other guys is going to outproduce him.
I guess, okay, so you're looking at Kevin Durant, and then you start to say, all right, yeah, he's going to obviously score more points. Their field goal percentage is going to be about the same, though. You're going to get tons more three-pointers out of Kevin Durant. Free throw percentage is obviously going to be better with Kevin Durant. But rebounds, assists could be better from Giannis. Steals probably going to be better.
Rebounds is probably split, but I agree. Giannis should clobber him in assists. Although Durant's no slouch in assists, at least in OKC.
And it's possible that playing in that new system that Durant can end up getting more assists this season as well. It's also possible that having less of a load on offense because he's surrounded by better players, especially surrounded by other people who can actually shoot three-pointers, we could see Kevin Durant play harder on defense and get more blocks. You know, in that series against Golden State last year, I think there was at least 3 games where he had 3 blocks. So we know that he can turn it up and he can do more in those categories if that's what's asked of him, if that's what's required. So I mean, there's definitely upside there with Durant too. What kind of kept me, like, essentially I would look at like a Kevin Durant, and then I would make the argument, well, what if he gets rested a few games? Giannis is going to be playing in every game because they're going to be fighting for a playoff position. But Durant might get some rest down the stretch. No. Same thing with Anthony Davis potentially. And then Karl Anthony Towns, my argument is the assist, really. Like, Giannis could potentially give you the same number of blocks that Karl Anthony Towns is going to give you. And the only thing that Karl Anthony Towns is absolutely going to do better than Giannis in is probably scoring and rebound.
Right. So,
and that's what I mean when I say, like, I would consider taking Giannis as high as number 4 in head-to-head, is because of it's just all those darn counting stats. So, anyways, Let's move on to some of the other guys who have moved up in the rankings or had their rankings changed. Victor Oladipo went from number 35 overall on Yahoo to being the number 18th ranked player on Yahoo right now. That's 17 spots jumped up in their rankings. So if you're going to take Oladipo, it's got to be in the second round. And, I mean, you might have to take him as high as the 13th pick if you're up there on the swing at the end of the first round.
Yeah, what do you think? What do you think's going on there? Like, what do you think changed with Oladipo, or do you think that's just driven by people are drafting him higher than Yahoo expected?
Where do we have him on the DFB rankings? Because I know because I work at Basketball Monster, and I know on our rankings that I worked on a lot this season, I think we've got him like at 17 or something. He's really high over there. What do we got?
In the head-to-head rankings, we've got him at 23. So, I mean, roughly the same. There's usually not a ton of difference, right, between 17 and 23.
Right.
So those are both significantly higher than where Yahoo had him originally at 35.
And,
I think don't know what to make of him. I don't think I would use, I know that my projections have him coming out right at the end of the second round. He's a guy I'm kind of hoping that somebody else drafts, and I don't have to worry about him because I think the floor and the ceiling are pretty far apart on Oladipo just because I don't think we know what he's going to do this season. He's in a totally new environment. We don't know what Russell Westbrook's going to look like next to him, so it could be bad. Also could be very, very good as a secondary ball handler in Oklahoma City's offense. He could really excel and get away from what he's been doing in Orlando. It could be a very, very good situation for him, and he pushes value up into the high teens. So,
And see, I guess
it makes me nervous.
I'm a little bit nervous about investing in Victor Oladipo, but I think a lot of that has to do with I drafted him last season, or I was targeting him last season, and then he fell off. Because Scott Skiles put him on the bench at near the beginning of the season, and we had to wait for him to come back into the starting lineup and to really show out. But that's not the situation this year. He's in Oklahoma City, as you just said, Mark. The having extra ball handling duties, being the number 2 option, without question, in a lot of respects, most likely for the Thunder, there should be a lot more surety with Victor Oladipo's role this year. Tyler, how do you see it? Do you still have issues with Oladipo or concerns, or are you kind of looking at it like he's in a new situation and we should be kind of bullish on him and be okay taking him in the second round?
I mean, I don't necessarily know that I'd love him in the second round, but I think he's pretty safe. I mean, I honestly think he was the best player on the Magic last year. Like, any game I watched, I'm just looking at him like, this is their best player. Why are they bringing this guy off the bench? Why are they not giving him big minutes? I think he's got some good across-the-board production. That field goal percentage is going to be a little bit down. But, I mean, other than that, I feel pretty safe on him.
So Kyle, I'm interested in your gut reaction. You get one of the top 3 picks, and you pick Curry, Harden, or Westbrook. And then it comes back to you in the second round, and the highest player on your sheet is Oladipo. You take Oladipo? No question. Or are you looking down further in your sheet and trying to find somebody else?
I've been taking first round. You almost take whoever falls to you in some regard.
Yeah.
But in the second round, I've been taking a big man. I've been taking a big man second, third, fourth round, unless somebody really good falls and I get a good value on an assist guy or a point guard. I feel like there's enough assist guys late or in the middle of the late rounds that I've been going really hard on big men in the second round. So it's kind of hard for me to take Oladipo, but he showed out in his first preseason game with the Thunder. They played him more minutes than I believe anybody else, and he put up 34 points. He was taking a lot of three-point shots. He got to the rack. He got fouled. And he also had some I don't know how to describe it, but there was a video game moment where he went to the rack and slammed on 2 other players, and he kind of Sky Chambers rode their body into a higher, more expressive dunk. And it just might be that season for Oladipo. He was really good in the second half last year, and the Magic are dumb for letting him go. As Tyler said, he was the best player on their team last year, and I think they chose poorly as the guy protecting the Grail in the Indiana Jones movie said to the Nazi.
You know, it's kind of surprising to me because I feel like there's a lot of optimism about Oklahoma City, and that's fine. But, like, we're all sitting here kind of making fun of the Bulls, right, because they have Jimmy Butler and Dwayne Wade and Rondo, and, like, who's going to space the floor and who's going to shoot three-pointers. I mean, the truth is, historically, Russell Westbrook is one of the worst three-pointer shooters in NBA history. He shoots near 30%. Defenses don't really respect his shooting a lot. The reason Oladipo got moved to the bench was because he couldn't really play with Peyton. And as you insinuated, maybe they chose poorly. But the fact that neither of them were great shooters kind of necessitated some sort of change. And the fact that it didn't make sense to continue to play the two non-shooters together in the backcourt. So I guess that gives me some pause for concern. Like, can Westbrook and Oladipo really, like, they're elite drivers, and maybe they just make it up that way. But, like, I worry a little bit about the floor spacing there.
Yeah, I'm very worried about that. And then we saw in that first preseason game as well. And actually, all these teams, they do these scrimmages where it's like the white versus black scrimmage, where they play against each other in front of an open crowd or whatever. And in the white scrimmage, Domantas Sabonis was starting at power forward, and then they started him in the first preseason game as well at power forward next to Steven Adams. And it seems like now I believe he hit a three-pointer. Yeah, he hit a three-pointer at near the start of that game. So maybe they're looking at him as someone who can stretch the floor, but they still have issues with being able to guard stretch fours. I guess they think that Sabonis and Steven Adams can step out and do that, and they're relatively fleet-footed for how big they are.
Yeah. Well, and see, that would actually make a big difference if Sabonis could step in and stretch the floor, because I think one of the reasons that OKC's offense worked so well last year, even though Russ couldn't shoot very well, is because Ibaka could stretch the floor. And so, like, most of the teams don't have a power forward that's that effective at stretching the floor, so it effectively gave them the floor spacing that a good three-point shooting point guard would have given them. But now with him gone, with KD gone, I have some concerns.
Tyler, what do you think about Sabonis getting the start at power forward? To me, it looks like that's what they're planning on doing right now. Which, if they're doing that, we have to start thinking about putting Sabonis on our boards and considering him later in drafts, don't we?
Yeah, I actually read a thing from their beat writer just yesterday after the game saying that that's their plan, is to start him. That they don't like – they want Cantor to come off the bench and just try to get rebounds and score as like kind of their sixth man. And, yeah, I think Sabonis – I'm not that familiar with him. I saw that game yesterday, but I think he might be a late-round target. If he's going to be a stretch four.
Well, and if they're starting with him at power forward, this is a team that a lot of people think is going to make the playoffs, so they must be pretty high on him. Unfortunately,
do you think if he starts, do you think he gets starters minutes?
That's hard because you still have Ersan Ilyasova likely getting some minutes off the bench, but he's also an expiring deal, and I think he was more or less, like, whether or not they want to say he was a throw-in, if they're not starting him, he's a throw-in. Especially considering, what else they got in that draft. But Enos is going to get 20 minutes off the bench. Yeah, no, it's tough. I still don't know. So you'd project him to be kind of middle of the road as far as his minutes go. But Mark, did Sabonis project as a good permanent rookie in your rookie projections?
Yeah, that's a good question. So he came out about ninth among all the rookies. So, considering where he was drafted, that's pretty good. Here were his top player comps, and I think this is where it kind of breaks down and gets less exciting. Carlos Boozer, Tristan Thompson, and Jason Thompson. So And in 30 minutes,
You made me want to turn off the podcast. That's how boring those three dudes are.
Yeah. So here's his projected line in 30 minutes per game. You get 11.5 points, 9 rebounds, and not much else. Maybe 50% from the field, but he's not going to block a ton of shots. He's not going to get any steals. He's not going to. He doesn't project to shoot a lot of 3-pointers based on what we saw in college. So his translated stats are, kind of what we always said about Carlos Boozer, right? Which is, hey, if you need somebody who's going to efficiently score 12 points and grab 9 rebounds, he's a pretty good guy. If you want something more than that, you probably should go shopping somewhere else.
He's interesting though as like a late roto option though, isn't he? Because his
sure. And the thing with rookies, right? There's always and so he shoots. He should shoot above 50% from the field and probably like 75% from the line. And the thing with rookies, right? These are translated stats. They're a little more informed than guesses. So like if you got your last pick in a draft and you just want a lottery ticket, it's always going to be a better idea to pick, Sabonis or somebody like that than say, I don't know, who do you know exactly what you're going to get from them? Like
Luol Deng.
Yeah, exactly. A Luol Deng, who exactly what his line's going to be. It's going to be 12 points, 6 rebounds, and a steal a game and a 3-pointer.
It's going to be so boring you're going to want to drop him.
Yeah. So you might as well see if Sabonis, has a better season than he projects for, and if he doesn't, then you can go ahead and drop him.
Cool. All right, let's move on and talk about somebody else. Nikola Jokic jumped from 48th overall on Yahoo up to 25th in their rankings update. That's a jump of 23 slots.
I actually think he started outside the top 100 on their first reveal.
Really?
I think so.
That's crazy. You're right. They did. He was outside the top 100, and then they pushed it up to 48, and then they pushed it up to 25, which at that point I just started to get angry, which
he's going straight to number 1.
They might have to invent a new number for him.
It just depends on how many drafts I participate in. Depends. I think I can, just by my drafting alone, I can push him all the way to number 1.
We were doing a draft earlier today. Mark and I were on CBS. It was a mock draft, and it was 8-cat roto. And I had the 12th pick in the first round. Mark had the 11th, and the whole draft, I knew that if I wanted a player, I had to pick them on that turn for fear that Mark would take them with one of his next 2 picks. Did you have a similar kind of quandary where you're sitting there going like, who should I pick based on whether or not I think Kyle might take somebody? Or do you're just zoned in on your own business?
I had the same problem. So I was trying, because so I almost felt like I was on the end, but I knew that like if there was 2 guys that I liked, that there was a good chance I had to be really strategic in who I picked so that you wouldn't pick them and I could pick them on the turn.
So where this kind of started out at the beginning of the draft is I'm sitting there with picks 12 and 13, knowing that it's going to go right back to Mark at 14. It's going to come back to him at the end of the 3rd round before it gets to me. And I know I can't get Jokic because I'm not taking Jokic with the 13th overall pick.
You thought about it, though.
I thought about it.
Yeah.
Because I'm crazy and I want to take Giannis with my 4th overall pick. So, but it all comes back to the fact that where you are in your draft, like if you want a guy, sometimes you may have to reach for them. I almost want to say like at your own detriment. But I don't necessarily think that's true because in a lot of respects, like rankings are like, if you know the statistics that bore the rankings, and you can look at it and you go, okay, you know what? Nikola Jokic is projected for this. I actually think he'll do this. And you think it's going to be better, then that means that he should jump up in the rankings a couple of slots. So consider that when you're planning on whether or not to reach for a guy or not. Like in your head, do you project them to do better than what that site projects them to do? Well, then maybe bump that person up in your rankings a little bit few slots or maybe even extra round if you're just like, I want them on my team all year because it's going to be a lot more fun.
And that's maybe a good place to put a plug for our own rankings, Kyle. Because the rankings are all meant to be like a neutral perspective on the player. Like a 50% chance they do better than these rankings, 50% chance they do or better than the projections, 50% chance they do worse than the projections. So obviously if you feel stronger about one person than the other, than everybody else does, or than at least, you think, hey, Giannis is really going to break out this season. That's when it doesn't become crazy to take them at 4, even though the rankings say they're probably like 12 or 14.
Word up. And that's head to head with my punt strategy and all that jazz. So I'm not suggesting taking Giannis 4th overall in a roto league or anything insane like that. All right, let's go. So Jokic, though, at 25, is that an okay slot for him? You have to take him at the beginning. Like, essentially, if you want Jokic...
It might be too low for him.
Wait, what do you mean too low?
Well, and in a snake draft, it probably, like, you're not going to draft him in the first round, so it's fine. But I don't think you should plan on waiting to the 3rd round, which I guess, fortunately I did wait for him into the 3rd round today, and it worked out for me.
That was on CBS, though, and they're where they have him ranked initially is much further down than where Yahoo does right now.
I think in many cases it will be difficult to get Jokic in the 3rd round.
Yep. But can you make can you make a rational argument for taking him 13th? Because if you're picking in the 2nd round and you got the first pick in the 2nd round, like, you might have to take him there if you want him on your team.
This might be just a nice way to get out of it. But like, if he's the best option at 13, I'm fine taking Jokic. Like, I'm not going to hesitate. But my guess is that I'm going to like somebody better at that spot. Like, I would prefer to take who's similar. Like, in a head-to-head league, if Towns is there, I'd rather have Towns. If Cousins is there, I'd rather have Cousins. If Giannis is there, I would rather have Giannis. I would probably rather have Porzingis, frankly. Head-to-head leagues, I'd probably rather Drummond or DeAndre Jordan. So I think there's going to be somebody better I like, but if for whatever reason my punt strategy or my personal beliefs about Jokic, I wouldn't feel like it was a waste of a pick to take him 13.
Man, I mean, it's there's been a conversation throughout this offseason between a lot of the quote-unquote fantasy experts or whatever, just kind of say, like, rankings don't matter. And they do matter. They give you a wonderful reference point. But where they don't matter is in realizing that if you're building a team and you have a set of guys who you think build your team out well, like, it might be okay to take Jokic at 13, even though the projections say he's the 25th overall player. So that's all, really. Mark, you said in a head-to-head you would take Porzingis over Jokic. What about Roto?
Yeah, I love me some Porzingis. Yeah, I think.
But if he's going to shoot 43%, like, doesn't that scare you off a little bit in Roto?
I want to make sure that I'm not giving different advice than what our rankings say. So I'm gonna pull that up real quick. But I think let me just make sure that's not. I do have Jokic above Porzingis. They're very, very close in Roto. So to some degree, it depends, I think, on what you're looking for at that point in the draft, which is always a cop-out answer. I would probably still take Porzingis. One thing I really like about Porzingis that Jokic doesn't necessarily give you, even though Jokic is the truer center, is Porzingis is going to block a lot more shots. I always like to, like, blocks is one of the hardest categories for whatever reason for me to always accumulate. So if I can tick off blocks with something else, and Porzingis is going to give you pretty good steals. He's going to give you 3-pointers. Who knows what his ceiling is as far as scoring. I would probably take Porzingis and try to make up for the field goal percentage later, rather than take Jokic and try to make up for the blocks later, if that makes sense.
All right, Tyler, here's an issue I've been having. For Roto leagues, I took Paul George in a Roto league last year, and then I found myself trying to make up for his less than adequate field goal percentage. But that's just who Paul George is. So he's going to shoot a lower field goal percentage than the 48% that you're targeting for your team in a rotisserie league. So that means you have to try to make up that distance between the 42, 43% Paul George is going to shoot and the 48%. And he's doing that on a lot of shots. So it's a high volume of low field goal percentage that you're trying to build up. And I don't want to do that at the start of my draft. So Porzingis is kind of in that same conversation for me in a rotisserie league where I'm worried that his field goal percentage is going to be too low. Do you have that same kind of concern about guys like Damian Lillard in rotisserie, or is that something that you feel like you just sometimes have to bite the bullet on because they're otherwise a great value?
Well, yeah, I mean, it always gets to a point where it's like, okay, this is just, I mean, like the stats are too good here. But yeah, I mean, I try to avoid those type of players in Roto leagues. I would definitely say that. I mean, just looking through the rankings, I push guys up who are going to shoot good percentages a little bit and try to avoid the bad percentage guys. Just because, like you said, you're digging out of that hole the whole rest of the way then, because you don't want to be dead last in a category in a Roto league or you're going to be in trouble.
Holla.
Your comment made me curious at who the most detrimental person to your field goal percentage was this season. I'm trying to look it up.
Okay, while you look that up, I'll say one crazy thing about Jokic, and I think Mark kind of hit on this the other night. Mark's rankings only have him projected for 27.5 minutes a night. So if you're a person who believes he's going to get 30 or 32 minutes, like any ranking Mark has, he's going to be ranked way higher.
Right. And that's that. So I didn't work on these rankings with you, Mark, this year, but on the Basketball Monster stuff where I was working with that, take a look at all the stats that Mark has. Even if it's just taking a look at the minutes, that's probably the most important thing. And if you agree or disagree, then you're going to know, okay, you know what? I think Jokic would get a couple more minutes. Okay, bump him up in the rankings a little bit. Have that understanding. Whatever rankings you're working off of, that's kind of the cool thing about working with Mark's rankings, or it is because if you look at those numbers, without a doubt those numbers correlate with the rankings. Whereas if you go look at ESPN where they've got Darren Collison projected for 3.1 blocks per game, that the rankings don't correlate with what the projections show that they have. So it just gives you a better understanding or a better feel of like, oh, okay, I get it. Isaiah Thomas is ranked here because he scores a bunch of points and he gets decent assists and he does this well and he does that well, but he's ranked this low because he doesn't do these other things well. And that's what you kind of get when you really kind of try to take in the projection and understand why a player is ranked where they are. Moving back to
any guesses who was the worst, at least in my projections, which is probably pretty close to real life from last season, who the most detrimental person to your field goal percentage is?
Rodney Stuckey.
Paul George is second.
Lowry.
Paul George is second.
Damian Lillard?
Emmanuel Mudiay.
Okay, yeah, that makes sense.
Yeah. That's what I thought at first. I was like, it's not Paul George, it's not Lillard, because those guys obviously shoot so much, and then I saw that was Mudiay, and that made a lot of sense.
It does make a lot of sense. Hopefully he takes a jump this year. I mean, he was only 19 last season. Miles Turner moved from 107th overall on Yahoo to 38th. So you got to take this dude in the fourth round now.
And Kyle, you took him. I can't remember exactly where you took him. Fairly high in our mock draft today.
Yeah,
was that third round or fourth round?
I believe it was third round. Or might have been the beginning of the fourth. But
I would love to hear your case for Miles Turner, because I think I've got him at like.
You got him
77th, I think.
87th right? In the 8-cat ranks.
Jokic, Kristaps had gone off the board in that mock that we were doing earlier, and I wanted another big man who blocked shots, and I wasn't. The fact that Yahoo had moved him up to 38th, I didn't know. Look, people who play fantasy, a lot of times they'll play on multiple sites. So if they get it in their head that, oh, Miles Turner's the 38th ranked player on Yahoo, well, that's where I need to be looking at him is in the 4th round. I didn't want to miss out on him because those other – I knew Jokic wasn't going to fall to me, but then Kristaps didn't fall to me either, and I was just kind of like, all right, I'm going to go with Miles Turner because I believe – look, he's the starting center. He's like 20 years old, maybe 21 now. He projects to be LaMarcus Aldridge with blocks. So and then that's I mean if it's a rotisserie league, that's what we were mock drafting for, I just felt like his percentages and he has the potential to be an absolute fantasy monster.
Actually, I trust you and what's going on in Yahoo probably more than I trust myself on Miles Turner. So I want to read you. So I've got him 111th in head-to-head. I think that's probably too low. I want to go quickly over his stat line with you, and you can tell me where you think he probably needs – like he's probably going to outperform the projection I have for him now. Okay? So I've got him for 70 games, probably primarily because he missed so much time last year with his injury. You think he exceeds that? He played 60 games last year.
So last year, I think he broke his thumb and he missed 20 games or something like that. Essentially, the way I look at the injury stuff is if it's not a recurring injury, if it's not something that is, then I'm not going to discount them too much. You know what I mean?
Right. No, that's fair. So I got him last year. He played 23 minutes a game. I've got him for 29. Do you think he goes over that?
You go back and you look at a lot of what I do when I'm trying to discern how many minutes a player is going to get is I'll go back and I'll look at what their coach has done historically. Mm-hmm. And there were times where, you go back and you look at who Nate McMillan played a lot when he was coaching in Portland, and he would give Brandon Roy and he would give LaMarcus Aldridge tons of minutes, and then his rotation.
Point, the last season he coached, LaMarcus Aldridge played 39.6 minutes per game.
Yeah.
Gerald Wallace played 36 minutes a game. Season before, Aldridge played 38. Roy played 37.
And Nate McMillan has compared like the LaMarcus Aldridge comparison isn't just Kyle, this random fantasy dude giving you his opinion on this. Like Nate McMillan said that too. So, and the block potential is just out of this world. Like he could, So anyways, there's just.
Do you think he shoots any 3-pointers? I've got him projected for almost no threes.
I haven't heard anything about that yet, so my expectations for Miles Turner's 3-point shooting is pretty low right now.
Okay, I've got him for 6.5 rebounds. Looks like last year he's about 5.5. Does that seem probably too low?
But you only have him going for how many minutes?
29.
I mean,
maybe appropriate per minute, but he needs to come up in the minutes.
Right, exactly. Like I think a safe minutes projection for him is closer to like 31 right now because you see through McMillan the possibility that he might play 36 minutes a night. The 38 minutes a night, that just doesn't happen anymore for the most part.
No.
Unless you're James Harden.
I can't believe that Aldridge played almost 40 minutes a game the last time McMillan coached. Like that doesn't seem like that long ago, but that's almost like a different NBA and a different fantasy than we have now.
Yep, absolutely. And you hear, and then Josh had the Vigilant Sports guy. Shoot, I can't think of his name right now. Scott Agnes on his podcast a little while back, and Scott Agnes was saying that he thinks Miles Turner is the number 2 option on this team. So you start considering those things, and you start to imagine, okay, about 15 to 20 points a game, better rebounds because he's playing more minutes. And Miles Turner averaged 3.3 blocks per game in the playoffs last year against Toronto, which is just insane, and that's not real, but it's still sexy as hell to read.
Yeah. So if I bump him up to 32 minutes, I got him for 15 points, almost 2 blocks, 7 rebounds. And it's primarily the categories I think you care about with Turner.
Well, no, I mean, I really, what do you got for his percentages?
Oh, that's a good point. 49% and
74.1.
74%. Yep.
Like those aren't terrible, 74%,
good.
especially like
That'll play.
exactly. And the fact that he's 20 years old, there's room for growth, and he's going to be 20 pretty much this whole season. He turned 20 in March, so tons of potential.
No, I think I'm probably too low on him.
So, and this is a unique season. I keep trying to say this to people over and over again. We saw a crazy number of really good rookies from last year's draft class. That was the best rookie draft class since 2003. And so that means that going into your second year in the NBA, a lot of guys will break out. There's just a lot of good situations. I mean, last year we had CJ McCollum, who was like the only real breakout player who went from nothing to something great. Whereas this year we have so many players who stand to step into larger roles, whether that's Miles Turner or Devin Booker on Phoenix. Yeah, man, there's seriously like at least 15 guys who are easily you could say they have a great chance at having better production this season, which is just, I don't know, it's kind of unheard of.
Can I say one quick thing about Turner?
Absolutely, you can talk about him as much as you want.
The only thing with Yahoo's 38 is I'm kind of worried that might be pretty close to his ceiling. So, like, if you're picking him at 38, which is fine, like, does anyone really think he's going to go much higher than 38?
That's a good point.
No, and that was a frustrating thing to me about seeing them rank him at 38 is like that's the absolute, that's where you draft him if you're like, oh crap, I better make sure he's on my team. Like that's your desperation draft spot. So I really don't know how Yahoo got him that high in their rankings. Like
I agree with that completely. Like 107, when that was the ranking, I was jumping all over that. Like 70, 80, boom, I was getting him. Yep. But like at 38, I'm like, I think I'll go for someone else. Like that's it for me. Like that's the top of his projection.
Right, but I will say this: if Kristaps is off the board, Jokic is off the board, and you're looking and you start to think that blocks are getting thin, or that you're not as
below Rudy Gobert, do you think that makes sense?
I'm sorry.
They have him 2 spots ahead of Rudy Gobert. Does that make sense? Like if you're thinking about blocks.
Yeah, because I think with Miles Turner, you've got just as much block potential as I pretty much think Turner has as much block potential as anybody. Like, I mean, I'm not saying that. I'm not saying that he's Hassan Whiteside.
He's going to score way better than Gobert. Like he's going to exceed him in scoring.
Right. Gobert's going to get more rebounds.
Yeah.
Yep. No, I mean, I think I would want Turner over a Gobert, but I'm also a Gobert hater because he doesn't score enough points.
Right.
But that's consistent with last year. I was hating on Gobert last year too a little bit.
It's true. You were. I can corroborate that story.
Well, and he's so hard to pick. Gobert's so hard to pick early because like all the good points guys go early. So like if you pick him, you're so much further behind. And it's really hard to make it up in points.
And then you have to target guys who get you more points. And if you want to compete in that category, and then you start forcing your hand a little bit sometimes, and maybe going after Evan Fournier a little bit earlier than you want to. And I just, if I'm going to go after guys early, I want to get guys that I know I really like. So I don't know. I'm okay with taking Turner at 38, but I think I'm with you, Tyler, that like that's the ceiling, and that's what's so damn frustrating about it.
Yahoo.
All right, looking out a little bit more. They had Jay Crowder ranked at 186 originally. Now he's ranked at 50th. I kind of feel like they gave Crowder the Miles Turner treatment in that like he's at his ceiling right there.
That's probably true. I have a long history of loving Jay Crowder. I think one of my first articles when we worked together at RotoWire was about how great Crowder was going to be when he moved from Dallas to Boston. So it pains me to say it, but I don't think he has a ceiling much above the 50 that he's ranked at. In fact, I don't know that I would take him 50. Generally, though, I'd be curious to hear your take on him, Kyle, because I do like what he gives you. He gives you a lot of three-pointers. He gives you a lot of steals. I haven't seen him actually go that high in the mock drafts I've done, but that may be happenstance. So I'd be curious to see if you've seen him actually go that high.
Well, the problem is that now he's going to go that high regardless, or he'll go close to that high. You know, I was looking at Crowder as more of a 7th-round pick potentially.
Yeah, that feels a little bit like I don't want him to be my 4th player on my team,
and I don't,
or potentially 5th.
I like having Crowder on my team. He's a good player, but like you just said, there's you don't want to be your 4th player because there's other dudes right around there who you're going to take. DeAndre Jordan, they had him ranked 71st. Now he's at 47th. They had Nicholas Batum ranked 74th. Now he's at 48th. And they had my boy Goran Dragic ranked 70th. Now he's at 49th. That one pisses me off more than any other, the Dragic one, because with Dwayne Wade gone, with Chris Bosh out, Dragic is in a wonderful position to be the 1-2 punch with Hassan Whiteside on that team. And then everybody else is just going to kind of fill in around those two. And I was getting Dragic, and I love Dragic in rotisserie leagues for his great field goal percentage. Free throw percentage is kind of meh, but it's not so bad that you can't make up for it. So I was pretty pissed that Goran got bumped up in the rankings because I was feasting on him a little bit later. How do you guys feel about Dragic? Tyler, do you like him this season? Do you feel like the absence of Dwayne Wade is reason to get bullish on Dragic in drafts?
Yeah, I think Dragic's probably a top 50 player this year. I mean, like you said, you got the great field goal percentage for a guard. We have him ranked 57th at only 15.4 points a game. And if he only scores 15 points, the Heat might only score like 80 a game. So that could be a problem for the Heat. Who are they else going to give the ball to? It's him, Whiteside, and who?
Well, Josh Richardson's going to get the ball quite a bit. He can shoot off the dribble. He can hit those open J's. And then Justice Winslow is going to do just a lot more. He's going to have the ball in his hands. He's going to be able to do a little bit of playmaking, and he took 5 3-pointers tonight. Justice Winslow made 2 of them.
All right, well, that's good. Let's hope he takes a good step forward. But I don't know. I just think Dragic,
that's got to be like his season total from last year.
2 3-pointers. He matched it.
He matched it tonight. No, that would be. I mean, if Winslow can start shooting, that would be. Other than his shooting, he's such a fun player to watch.
He's another 19-year-old rookie from last season who's going to be 20 most of the year this year. So tons of upside with him. And he's a great defensive player. They're starting him at small forward. He's going to get the shooting guard, small forward, and power forward. And I know that sounds weird, but they're all interchangeable this season for the Miami Heat is kind of the system that they're running. And this offseason, Pat Riley came out and said that they plan on giving Justice Winslow tons of minutes. He's the starter. They like him. They're gonna help him develop. I like Winslow. He's a good pick near the end of drafts. Aaron Gordon shot from number 90 up to 55. I like targeting Gordon in my drafts. I hate that they brought him up this high in the rankings. How do you guys feel about Gordon and his situation with the Magic?
So he's the starting small forward, right?
He is.
And
yep.
That doesn't feel like the right fit for him.
All right, I'm going to condense this question. Do you believe in it? Do you think he's going to do you think he's going to be all he can be this year?
No, I just that's kind of where I was headed very slowly by point was I don't like the position they're putting him in Orlando. I don't think he's in his best position to excel, and I don't know that I necessarily like his underlying stats from a fantasy perspective anyway. He's not somebody I'm usually targeting in drafts.
Tyler, what you think about Aaron Gordon?
I'm going to second that, especially at this ranking. If he's
I'm sorry, I said haters. That's all.
What do you like? What do you like about Gordon?
How pushing ahead, real good, but
Keep going, Tyler.
I'm just really of like him getting injured or him just not producing at that small forward position the way everyone thinks he's going to.
Okay.
I feel like he got a big bump from his slam dunk contest, and I'm not quite sure why. But I'd be curious to hear what you like about his, like, what do you think he's going to be good at? What categories do you think he's going to help you in?
The first thing he's going to be good at is defense, because you go back and watch last season, he guarded DeMarcus Cousins one night, and then he guarded Kyrie Irving the next night, guarded James Harden the next night, and like he would guard anybody who was the best player, regardless of position. He would.
That's fine, but that's not really a fantasy category.
But it is, because that's going to keep him on the floor. Like, that's going to get him his minutes. And then watching, and then you start to hear about how Frank Vogel says something along the lines of, we're going to use him the way that we used Paul George in Indiana. And I get it. You got to take that with a grain of salt. But Paul George wasn't the best ball handler when he came into Indiana. He had to develop into that. He wasn't the greatest shooter when he came into Indiana. He had to develop into that. And when you watch Aaron Gordon play, Paul George, like, comparing that role, it's what was he getting last year? Like 4 assists a game or something like that? Like, it wasn't a ton of assists, but he's still regarded as somebody who contributes positively there. I look at Aaron Gordon.
You're talking about Aaron Gordon or Paul George?
I think it was Paul George last year with the 4 assists. But I look at Aaron Gordon and the fact that he's going to be on the floor, he's going to get minutes. Yes, I am worried about the fact that Frank Vogel said, hey, if we didn't have the guys we have, I'd be playing Aaron Gordon at power forward, because that makes you feel like, okay, so because of the stupid team you guys have built, you're going to play this guy out of position. But I think Aaron Gordon can play small forward. I think he can handle the ball better than what people think. I think he's, as far as his developing his three-point shot, it's not terrible. He's not Sean Marion, and Sean Marion's done well.
He got 29% from the three-point line last year. I think it's just a lot of hype from a guy who averaged 9 points a game last season. Like, I'm gonna let. I feel like you're talking about him the way that we want him to be, like that we want him to turn into, and I could be wrong. Like, he may turn into that player, but I'm not going to use a draft pick to like find out.
They're moving away
letting
from
somebody else take the risk on him.
They're moving away from Nikola Vucevic as being like, they might. It feels like they're moving away from him. Everything they brought in Biyombo, they brought in Serge Ibaka. We've still heard that there's like a fight for the starting center job, which I believe. I don't think Vucevic absolutely has it locked up. So who scores on this team?
That's a good question.
And that's another reason why Aaron Gordon's going to be forced to do stuff on offense, because you don't have any other option. Because Evan Fournier,
I don't know that I just assume because there's a vacuum of scoring that it's going to be Aaron Gordon. I hope that it is. Like, I like Aaron Gordon, I like the tools, but I'm not going to bank on him like filling in that role.
Here's what I'll say about the scoring. Like, if he's going to be the number 1 or number 2 option, which will probably be number 2 to Fournier, isn't that going to just lower his field goal percentage because he's going to be taking a lot tougher shots? I mean, like, so we're going to
Frank Vogel did say that he's like Paul George, so
that's what I mean. So it's going to be a give and take. Like, even if he gets a bunch more points, his field goal percentage is going to go down. Now, maybe you're punting field goal percentage, and that's fine, but I mean, like, I think there's going to be some give and take there.
Just because somebody takes more field goal attempts doesn't mean that they're gonna, like, yes, he'll probably take more threes, which could bring it down. But if he's got the ball in his hands and he's able to actually do a little bit with it, he might take himself to the rack and get more dunks this season too.
But here's the thing, though. Like, what's Biyombo going to do? He's going to stand there under the rim because he can't shoot. So, like, there's going to be a defender there, right? That's what I'm saying. Is like I agree that like some people can maintain their field goal percentage with more shots, but I don't think this team has the spacing to create good shots for him if they start Biyombo.
Well, but the spacing with Biyombo and Vucevic is kind of the same, isn't it?
I would agree with that.
No, Vucevic shoots, doesn't he? I mean, he's not shoot
Vucevic can
three-pointers.
shoot jumper like a mid range. I don't think Biyombo can shoot anything.
No, he
Layup.
can't. No. I was more or less just throwing a little bit of shade at Vucevic. Because, but no, Vuce obviously can hit a mid-range jump shot, and he's supposed to try stretching it out to 3. And if he can get comfortable with that, maybe they'll let him take some shots from 3. All right, so you guys hate Aaron Gordon. That's good to know.
No, at 90, like where he was, I was like thinking about like, all right, well, I can see him like maybe taking a step forward, and I would pick him. But at 55 again, it's just like to me that's like ceiling. Like I'm not biting on that.
Yeah. As for me, I hate him.
Mark, I'll just say this.
I send him nasty emails every day.
No, there's like a
Letters. Like,
there's a 25-minute.
I was so mad that he won the dunk contest last year.
He didn't win it though.
No, I'm sorry. That I was super glad that he got second in the dunk contest last year.
All right. Wow.
He didn't win. He went under his. The only dunk I remember is him going under his butt and bringing him around and dunking. Like I thought he won.
I'm pretty sure Levine won.
Yeah, Levine beat him.
Oh my goodness!
Yeah.
Remember they had the 10 dunks. It was the dunk off, and they each did like 10 because they both kept getting perfect scores.
I feel like he's got an extra 20 spots in the rankings because of how exciting that dunk contest was. Which is why I'm not drafting him.
I don't like Aaron Gordon at 55 overall on Yahoo where they have him now, but it's
so you hate him too.
I don't like him there.
The devil's advocate. Come on, that was totally not cool.
All right, let's move on. Evan Fournier went from being ranked 215th to being ranked 62. I love his scoring potential this season. I like his shooting percentages, but I don't know if he's going to get enough peripheral stats, whether that's rebounds, assists, steals. Yeah, I think he's going to be the first option on offense for the Magic, but I don't know. 62 is like, I'm okay taking him there because I think I'm getting a 20-point scorer, but I feel like they overreached on this one too.
Yeah, I think the value's gone. I agree with that. I like the player, but you're not getting a lot of value if you have to draft him there.
Nope.
And I secretly still kind of hope that Hazonia takes his job.
That's cool. Rondé Hollis Jefferson jumped from 337th, which was just a terrible old ranking, to 81st. Hollis Jefferson isn't going to score a lot of points, but his percentages are pretty decent. So I like him in rotisserie leagues. He's going to get you potentially good steals and blocks, right? Like that's kind of what you're looking at Rondé Hollis Jefferson for, is steals, blocks, rebounds. I was
just going to say rebounds. He gets a surprising amount of rebounds.
Crazy amount of rebounds.
Like the Nets have to play somebody, and he's a legitimate NBA player, so there's not like a lot of competition for minutes there. So I think you feel pretty safe about the playing time. This is actually the one I was most upset about because I felt like you could get him near the end of a lot of drafts, and I think he has, he could be the 70th best player this season, but at that ranking again, I think a lot of the value is gone.
Yep, agreed. The steals you were going to get, you could get elite steals at the end of the draft from Hollis Jefferson, and that was what was really interesting to me. But now you can't. Now you have to actually pay for them, which is terrible because I'm a millennial and I like free stuff. Tyler, how do you feel about Rondé?
Just from doing some of those custom rankings and projections, I can tell you that if you punt 3-pointers and points, like a couple people have sent me, that dude goes crazy high. His thing just shoots through the roof. And so, I mean, if that's your build, there's your fellow.
All right.
You heard it there first. That's probably true if you take away points and what else did you say?
Threes.
Points and threes. He's probably a pretty good option.
Gary Harris went from 132 on the old Yahoo ranking to 82. It's a 50-point jump. Gary Harris was another guy who was a great shooting guard, end of the draft target. And now you got to pay for him.
Yeah, and you kind of have to deal with that. Like, you don't exactly know. Like, there's a pretty good chance that Gary Harris is going to start and play starters minutes, but in the back of your head, you're always kind of thinking like, is Jamal Murray going to take his job at some point? Or is they're going to start splitting minutes or something like that? I know that it's unlikely, but I worry about that a little bit. And Gary Harris is one of those guys that has to play a bunch of minutes to be pretty, to have a lot of fantasy value.
He does, because he doesn't score in bunches. There was an interesting quote from Coach Michael Malone yesterday, though. He said that Gary Harris took about 10 shots per game last year. He wants him to take 15 this season. Now, granted, is that just a roundabout? Either way, it says that the coach expects him to have a bigger role in the offense. Apparently, even when the Nuggets were going after Dwayne Wade this offseason, Malone kept sending texts to Harrison being like, "You're still my baby." So yeah, Gary Harris played really good defense last year. He's super efficient. He just kind of became the perfect complementary player. He kind of became the new Avery Bradley or whatever, only less annoying. I hate Avery Bradley. I don't know why.
I think he's got he maybe is probably a better version of this player, but he reminds me a little of Courtney Lee, especially earlier in his career. I know that you don't love Courtney Lee, so maybe that's not a good comparison for you, but pretty efficient, good defender, but it's not going to fill up the stat sheets unless he's playing a lot of minutes.
So Courtney Lee in his rookie season, he came out and played really well in the playoffs, I believe for Orlando, right?
Right.
And then everybody came into the second season.
New Jersey? I can't remember which team.
One of those two, and then he was traded to the other one.
Right.
And everybody was kind of a little bit hyped up on him for the next season. And then Courtney Lee came out, and he did the exact same thing he had done before. And that's exactly what he's done his whole career. Gary Harris is better than that.
Yeah. No, like I said, a better version of that, but it's kind of the same profile.
I'm reluctant to accept any comparison between an NBA player and Courtney Lee. Jordan Clarkson, 109 was his original Yahoo rank, or his last Yahoo rank, and now he's at 83.
And didn't start tonight, if you care about preseason.
What the hell? Lou Williams started at shooting guard for the Lakers tonight. That was the only real surprise. And that means Jordan Clarkson came off the bench. I'm so sorry. Anyways, what do we do? What do you guys think about Clarkson? I like his potential this year, but are you gonna? I'm not gonna read too much into him not starting tonight. I'll read into a lot of stuff about the preseason more than I should, but I'm not reading too much into Clarkson coming off the bench, because even if he did,
You're choosing to skip this one.
It might be better for him.
I think they're going to try to stagger the minutes between him and Russell somewhat, just because, I think they want both of them guys to have the ball in their hands. So I can see him actually not starting him, but I still think he's going to get 30 minutes because they're going to finish the game with their best players.
I can dig that. I'm taking Clarkson, or I'd be okay taking him here, but it's kind of the same story that we've been talking about. It's like you ruined the value, Yahoo. You ruined the value. D'Angelo Russell was 125 on the Yahoo old rankings, now 87th. I'm taking D'Angelo as early as the fourth round if I'm feeling froggy in a draft, because in a head-to-head at least, because I think he's the number one option with the Lakers. He's going to score. He's got to score at least 20 points a game. He's playing in a new offense that's not from the 1980s, like the one that Byron Scott was running. If you go back and watch highlights from last season, it's ludicrous, the kind of college level offense these guys were running last year. D'Angelo is a shoot first point guard who has above average passing skills. Sounds a very similar kind of loose description to Steph Curry, and then you've got Luke Walton bringing over a similar system. I'm not saying D'Angelo Russell's going to be Steph Curry, but he's going to be like a hobo Curry.
Well, Kyle, I've only got him projected for 15 points, but he still comes out in my head-to-head rankings at number 46. So that same fourth round value that you're talking about, just because he does shoot a lot of threes, he gets steals, he gets rebounds and assists. He could pretty easily with a slight uptick in production, which I don't think is out of the question, have like an 18-5-5 season, which would give you what, second, third round value. I don't think it's that hard to squint and see him jumping up to that level of production. So I'm with you on Russell, actually. I think he's still too low.
What do you think, Tyler?
I'm going to third that. I think he's a good at least 40 spots too low.
I say all that. I actually try to wait on D'Angelo a little bit. If I can get him in like the 6th, 7th round, I think that's great. But I like to talk about when I start to think about potentially taking a player because that's realistically where I see his ceiling as kind of like a 4th or even potentially a 3rd round guy at the end of the year if all things go well. Moving on here a little bit, and we'll try to get this wrapped up. Marvin Williams, 214 in the old rankings, 92 now. Anybody want to say anything?
Not touching with the 10-foot pole at 92.
Say, Mark.
I don't care about Marvin Williams.
Okay, thanks. Harrison Barnes was 118. Now he is 94. I haven't taken Harrison Barnes anywhere.
This is great territory we're in. Marvin Williams versus Harrison Barnes.
Makes Marvin Harrison the guy.
They're like
the Colts.
Yeah, I mean, in a lot of ways, they're kind of similar players, really. Williams and Barnes.
Yeah, no. Now that you say that, it's tragically apparent.
Although, if you had to pick between the two, wouldn't you pick Barnes just because you're like, he's on a new team? Like, let's see what happens.
Absolutely. Here's my issue with Harrison Barnes. When I watch tape on him, I don't see like a dynamic player. I don't see somebody who's going to go out there and get his own buckets.
You see Marvin Williams from 5 years ago.
Wow, you are
right?
depressing. That is such a depressing thing to say.
I thought you time warped his brain there for a second. He just couldn't think about that.
I mean, really, like, you want them to do more. Like, you can tell that they are physically gifted athletes, but like, for one reason or another, it's hard to see them be assertive on the offensive end of the court.
Yeah,
like, they have some skills, they do some good things, but it's like you never see them. Like, it's always a little disappointing to watch them, I feel like.
Right, they're like Venus flytraps. They're like plants. If something great comes to them, they'll eat it, but they're not going to go out and like cook the meal or anything. That was a really bad analogy. Harrison Barnes, though, they keep talking about him becoming the second option or potentially first option. The Mavs said the same crap about Chandler Parsons, and that never played out. Yes, did Chandler Parsons have a really good second half for 14 games last year? Yes, he did, when he was finally healthy and cleared and playing big minutes, but then he got hurt again. Harrison Barnes, I don't think he's going to get hurt, so that's good, but I don't know if he's a first option, man. And that's what scares me.
I don't think you're happy if he's your first option.
Yusuf Nurkic jumped up from 171 up to 106. That's interesting to me because we saw in Denver's first preseason game, they started Jokic and Nurkic together. We've seen Coach Michael Malone say things throughout the offseason about potentially using the two big lineup again. When he talked to Zach Lowe this summer, Malone said that Jokic was working on his foot speed to be able to guard out on the perimeter more, which seemed to imply at the time that they were hoping to play him or expecting to play him next to Yusuf Nurkic more. And Nurkic now is becoming a guy who I'm targeting in the last few rounds of my drafts. Anybody?
Mark wants to take that. He loves him.
Yeah, I love Nurkic. I think that's a great guy. I would ideally look to take him and put him on my bench, like in a roto league, so that I didn't have to rely on him. But the upside is there. I think I had him ranked in the top 50 last season. I don't think he's lost any of that skill. The prospect for playing time is obviously less than it was last season, but talk about a guy who can get you a lot of steals and a lot of blocks and a lot of rebounds in a hurry. I think Nurkic might be as proficient at those categories as anybody in the league. So
Okay, so how many minutes?
Oh, go ahead. Sorry.
How many minutes does Nurkic need to play though? Because when people even though they see Jokic and Nurkic starting next to each other, they're still worried about Kenneth Faried's minutes, Darrell Arthur's minutes, the Nuggets going small and using Wilson Chandler or Danilo Gallinari at power forward, which is going to push out one of the big guys. How many minutes does Nurkic need to get for us to be happy taking him near the end of our draft? So, after pick 100. Because after pick 100, all your picks kind of just become a jumble. Okay, everybody's valued the same. You're just taking who you think is the best guy now for your team build and to fill your holes. Fill your holes. Is that what got you to?
To answer your question, I think Nurkic has got to. He doesn't have the same threshold as most players. Like I would say most players, you've got to get at least to 28 minutes. I think if you get Nurkic at 26 minutes a game, I think you're pretty happy with him. I think it's unlikely that he gets to that level, but I would be thrilled if he does. I think he's more in the 22 to 24 minutes a night, and I think that will be just enough to be tantalizing, but low enough that it's frustrating. I think if he got to 26 minutes a game, he could give you like 12 points, 9 rebounds, a steal and a half and 2 blocks or something, and you'd be thrilled with him. But I think at 22 minutes, I think he's going to give you not quite enough.
Here's the crazy part, though. If you look at the head-to-head rankings with the punts, in 23 minutes, he's ranked 117th. So it's like, yep. I mean, he's right in there.
He doesn't need a lot. Yeah. But I think you'll still be a little bit frustrated with him at that level. I think you've got to get – I think for any amount of consistency, you've got to get him – you've got to see him getting like 26 minutes a game.
In addition to some of all these positive jumps that we were talking about players taking, a couple of players took some really far negative drop. They took some big drops in their ranking. Rajon Rondo went from 47th down to 109th. Is Rondo now at a decent enough value that you can risk taking him on Chicago?
I actually think he is. He's probably a pretty good value at this point. I mean, he doesn't do a lot of things that you kind of expect out of your guards, so it makes it a little bit challenging, like some of the other plays we've talked about. But I don't see him getting a lot fewer assists than he got in Sacramento. So to be able to get potentially league-leading assists that low in the draft, I think is a pretty big win. You just have to kind of figure out how to make up for the other deficits, specifically that he doesn't score a lot and that he doesn't shoot any three-pointers.
It's hilarious to me that he went from 47th to 109 because the 47th might actually be.
That's about right.
Yeah.
Yeah. I mean, I have him at 42 in my head-to-head rankings because you just don't get 9 assists in the 4th round from anybody. So Rondo might be a good target in late in Yahoo drafts if you're looking for assists. In the 8th round or something.
Gosh.
You missed assists early on. You went like, you say you drafted like, Durant and then Millsap or something, and you never got the assists that you were looking for. Rondo's a great way to fill in for that deficiency.
Devin Booker was originally ranked 95th overall. He's now ranked 112th. They dropped him 17 spots. That's funny, though, because now we just learned yesterday that Devin Booker and TJ Warren are slotted in as the starting shooting guard and starting small forward for the Phoenix Suns this year, and they're supposed to start they started the first preseason game, and it was announced they're supposed to start there for the first regular season game, too. So that solidifies Devin Booker's value, where there was some worry about his minutes in a certain regard, relatively, this season. Now it seems like there essentially is no limit. Like Booker's in the starting spot. Yes, they still have Brandon Knight there, but they've also talked about playing Booker some, who grew an inch over the offseason, is now 6'7", playing a little bit at small forward when they can sneak him in there against smaller lineups. What's the issue with Booker though? Why is he ranked, in the 100s?
Doesn't make any sense to me.
Okay.
I've got him higher than that. I think the news that he's the starter only solidifies that. I think he's going to score a lot of points for you. He's going to hit a lot of 3-pointers. What prevents him from being any higher than, in the just above 100, like in the 80s, 90s, is that he's not at the point in his career, and he may never get there, that he gets a lot of steals. He's not going to get any blocks. So until he gets his assists a little bit higher, which I think could happen, at this point he's just a points and 3-pointer guy. But I mean, he's young, so those things could develop. But if I could get him on 100, I'd be thrilled.
It seems like the Suns are developing Booker to be their number one option. It's just a matter of time, really, when that happens. So he's an interesting player, but like Mark said, he's not really going to help you in defensive stats right now. He during the final stretch of the season last year, there was a point where Booker was dropping like 4 assists a game, but he was doing that in 36 minutes a night.
Mm-hmm.
And I would be. It's possible he plays that much, but I think it's a lot more likely he plays about 32, 33 minutes a night.
Right.
All right, really quick, let's just kind of get some rapid fire responses to some of these other guys. Bismack Biyombo, he was 86, now he's 116. Is it worth trying to grab his blocks in the last couple rounds to
I think so. If you need them, I think he plays. What do you think? 26 minutes a game, 28 minutes a game, something like that?
It depends. I mean, there's a part of me that thinks he's kind of like a 25-minute per game player right now, because that's kind of what I'm topping him out at, because Vucevic still has to play. Serge Ibaka still has to play. You wonder if they're
as long as he's playing 24-plus minutes a game, he's going to be really good in 2 categories. So if you need those 2 categories, he's going to get a lot of rebounds and he's going to block a lot of shots. Like, it almost doesn't – as long as he's getting like 20-plus minutes a game, he's going to be good in those 2 categories. And it doesn't matter how many minutes he plays, he's going to be bad in all of the other categories. So, it just comes down to team need with Biyombo.
Right. Do you need blocks at that time of the draft? It's okay to take Biyombo because he might do it for you. And the argument I keep making for the Magic might start Biyombo and Serge Ibaka is because that lineup, that starting front court, isn't much different than the Jan Mahinmi and Miles Turner starting lineup that Vogel started a lot with Indiana last year.
I wish they would just go with Gordon and Ibaka.
I agree. That's the other thing. It's that's probably their best lineup. Yeah. Then put Hazonia at the 3.
Hazonia and Fournier and Payton.
Oh no, you just waive Payton.
You're just rolling with 4 players.
It's better than having Elfrid Payton out there.
Actually, I mean, there's discussions that they could turn Hazonia into some sort of point guard, which I would not be opposed to.
The Fournier, and I mean, Oladipo should still be on the team, but Fournier,
bring back Oladipo,
and Hazonia should they
can be co-point guard.
Exactly. Payton might be so bad that they eventually were just like, screw this. I'm going to start these 2 dudes who can handle the ball and shoot threes. And Hazonia's, oh man, he's exciting. He's going to be fun. Dwight Howard went from 75th to 117th. That's one of the best values for head-to-head leagues. If you can get Dwight Howard that late in your draft for head-to-head, he's in a good situation in Atlanta this year.
Yep, totally agree. The only thing that worries you is how healthy can he stay? But at that late in the draft, you don't really care.
For real. Emmanuel Mudiay dropped 29 slots as well, from 110 to 139. I love Mudiay in your head-to-head leagues. If you're punting field goal percentage, Mudiay is great. If you care all
about your field goal percentage, you probably shouldn't pick him.
This is true.
Yeah. But otherwise, no, I have him 67 in our head-to-head rankings. He's going to – outside of Rondo, he's probably one of your best chances to get assists late. he actually shoots some 3-pointers, he gets some steals, he's going to score for you. Other than field goal percentage, he's really pretty useful.
All right, final two guys I want to talk about just because we're just gotten to the point where we got to get out of here. Joel Embiid and Dario Saric. Saric is ranked 149th now. Embiid is ranked 148th. They were both buried in the standings before. Are these guys? These guys are worth flyers at the end of the draft, right?
Yeah, specifically Saric. Saric is my highest rated rookie. I think I've got him at 115. I think he can do a little bit of everything. I think I would be much more interested in taking a flyer on Saric than Embiid. It's got nothing to do with Embiid's talent level, which is probably far exceeds Saric's. It's simply the preventative measures that they're going to put in place with Embiid. The fact that he's not going to play any back-to-backs, he'll probably rest more than you want him to be. He'll probably be on some sort of minutes limit, whether they want to admit that or not. And so I just think it will be frustrating to own him in a head-to-head league where you're going to miss a bunch of games. And I'd rather go with healthy guys like, somebody like Saric.
But so have they come out and actually said that Embiid is not going to play in any back-to-back games the whole season, or just for the start of the season?
And I don't know that I have that sourced. I would be my working impression was that was for the entire season.
That would be insane.
But I could be wrong there.
I know. I mean, I think I saw that notion out there, but I was worried that it was just one person taking what was said and like taking it to its extreme. Like, oh, he's not going to play in back-to-backs. Well, like, was it said for the whole season? Like, was that exact phrase used? Because if not,
I just feel like
you're
getting sometimes where you're like, you get Embiid in your lineup and then you just find out, oh yeah, he's sitting out tonight for rest. They just want to make sure, which is totally fine, right? Like you got to be careful with that guy, but I don't want to bother with that.
Okay, I get that. What about are you more intrigued though by the fact that he started in their first preseason game?
Yeah, I mean, all positive signs are obviously positive. And I don't mind taking a flyer on him. I'm just saying between the two, even though Saric is a little less talented player, I would go with Saric.
From everything I heard, they think Embiid is like the best one of their three big men. And so they basically plan on starting him the whole year, but from what I've heard, that they're going to sit him on all back-to-backs till whenever they decide that he's healthy enough. Could be the whole year, could be anything.
I'm gonna look into that before the next podcast. Sorry, I don't have an answer for you right now. Or
which of those two would you take a flyer on, Kyle? I mean, that's kind of the range you're taking a flyer on players.
Yeah, I'm a pretty big believer in Saric. I think I would take a flyer on both of them.
Yeah,
I think they're both.
So you say you've got one spot left, and you have to pick one though.
Oh, then I'm probably picking Saric today. Yeah. But it would also depend on my team. Am I really light on blocks? Then I'm just going to grab Embiid because he might be a monster even if he's playing 22 minutes a game for the first two months or whatever.
Yeah, and back to like just to give you a sense of where I feel about Embiid, like he's similar, right? Like he's going to be a good rebounder. He's going to be a good block shot guy if nothing else. I would take him over Biyombo, even though Biyombo might be a little higher in our rankings because there is that 20% chance that Embiid just comes out as healthy and is a monster this season, and there's really no potential for Biyombo to rank much higher than he is right now.
Yep, that's a really good point, and that's kind of what it goes back to the whole thing of like we were just talking about Embiid at 148 and Biyombo who was ranked like 118th or whatever, like. It doesn't matter. Yeah. Doesn't matter where they're ranked in that. And the value difference is so minuscule between those 40 slots. It doesn't matter. You don't look at the rankings. Take the player that fits your team best at that point in the draft.
Yeah, take someone you believe in. You know what I mean? Like don't take a guy just because he's the next guy on the queue. Like take someone you think this guy could be better. Could take a step forward.
Exactly. All right. Hey. Guys, that's I think that was a pretty good Yahoo rankings thing. Just to give props where they're due. Dean Vasich, who you can follow on Twitter. I'm going to look that up. He created this awesome little Google Doc that had, you can follow him at Dean Vasich. That's DeanVasic, not CHIC. And he created this awesome thing that you can go find him on Twitter. It's just an easy Google Doc that we use to reference all the Yahoo changes. So big thanks to Dean for having that tool out there for us to use as a reference. All right, Mark and Tyler, is there anything you guys are working on right now that you want to share or let people know about?
Go ahead, Mark.
Man. No, I've got nothing. My rankings are up. I'm just sitting back and enjoying life.
All right. If you want custom rankings, well, we're doing them. So, yeah, the email's on the website, dfbpod@gmail.com. Just send over a note. We'll give you some custom rankings. Other than that, that's about it.
Cool. Yeah, I do all my work over at Basketball Monster now. So catch me there. Catch me on Twitter at RotoKyleNBA. Mark, where can they find you on Twitter?
Mark F. Roberts. Mark with a C.
Tyler, where can they find you on Twitter?
You can find me on Twitter at Watsy4444. So that's my last name with a Y and 4 4s.
Groovy. Thanks for listening to the show, everybody. We love you. Have a good day, and we'll talk to you later. Peace.